and apologize for poetry. Philip Sidney. Where was Philip Sidney born? Kent. When was Sidney born? 1554. In which battle did Sidney died? Zutphen, 1586. What was Sidney's most famous sonnet sequence? Astropel and Stella. Who was Sidney's father? Sir Henry Sidney. Who was Sidney's mother? Mary Dudley. Who was Sidney's younger brother? Robert Sidney. Who was Sidney's younger sister? Mary Herbert. To whom did Sidney dedicate Arcadia? Mary. In which year did Sidney enroll at Shrewsbury School? 1564. At which university did Sidney study? Oxford. Which disease did Sidney recover from in 1572? Plague. To whom did Sidney write Astropel and Stella? Lady Penelope. When was Astropel and Stella published? 1591. Which literary form influenced Sidney's poetry? Petrarchan. What type of literature influenced Sidney's work? Italian. What religious movement influenced Sidney? Protestantism. Who led Sidney's forces at Zutphen? Norris. How many love sonnets did Sidney write? 108. What subject did Sidney excel in at school? Grammar. What was the peak period of Sidney's literary activity? 1579 to 1584. What was Sidney's unfinished prose romance? Arcadia. What was the other title of the prose? Arcadia. The Countess of Pembroke Arcadia. Arcadia is considered a landmark work of the English Renaissance. What was the name of Sidney's literary group? Areopagus. Who was one of Sidney's poet friend? Greville. In which year did Sidney write The Defense of Poesy? 1580. In which year was The Defense of Poesy published? 1595. What is another name for The Defense of Poesy? Apologie for Poetry. Who wrote School of Abuse? Gaussen. What was Gausson's religious affiliation? Puritan. To whom did Gausson dedicate School of Abuse? Sidney. Which classical philosopher influenced Sidney's argument? Aristotle. Which of Sidney's work is a sonnet sequence? Astropel and Stella. What does Greek root of poet mean? Makers. What is poetry described as in The Defense of Poesy? Imitation. Which Roman poet's work does Sidney reference? Horace. What is another aim of poetry besides teaching? Delight. What is the title of Horace's work mentioned in the text? Ars Poetica. In which year approximately was Ars Poetica written? 17 BCE. Which philosopher, historian and poet does Sidney compare? Cicero. What term does Sidney use to describe poetry's role in overcoming ignorance? Light giver. What practice of writing does Sidney follow in his argument? Rhetoric. In which year does Sidney discuss the state of English literature? 1580. What is the primary focus of the first part of Defense of Poesy? Theory. Which two disciplines does Sidney compare poetry with? Philosophy. What type of argument does Sidney construct? Formal. What does Sydney consider the highest of all arts? Poetry. Which field apart from poetry does Sydney discuss as a teacher of virtue? History. Which literary period influenced Sydney's work? Renaissance. What is the first argument Sydney makes for poetry's supremacy? Ignorance. What is the primary aim of poetry? According to Sydney, instruction. Which profession does Sydney compare to the poet apart from the philosopher? Historian. Who does Sydney cite as an example of wisdom in poetry? Ulysses. Which character does Homer associate with valor? Achilles. Which character does Homer associate with anger? Ajax. What does the historian record according to Sydney? Fortune. What literary genres does Sydney say can arouse sympathy? Pastoral. What genre does Sydney say exposes folly through laughter? Satire. What genre has been disregarded by playmakers and stage keepers? Comedy. What is one of the repeated criticism of poetry? Lies. Who banished poetry from his commonwealth? Plato. What does Sydney say poetry aids in? Memory. What kind of speech does Sydney consider poetry to be fit for? Music. What does Sydney say poetry does not claim to be? True. Who does Sydney say is responsible for poetry's bad reputation? Bad writers. What did Plato seek to protect youth from? Falsehood. In which three countries does Sydney say poetry flourished? Italy. What is the main issue with English poets according to Sydney? Laziness. Which pastoral poets does Sydney use to compare Spenser? Virgil. What kind of language does Sydney criticize in Spenser's work? Rustic. Who does Sydney say should be responsible for moral instruction? Poet. What kind of knowledge does Sydney say poetry provides? Moral. What does Sydney say can make even bitter lessons enjoyable? Sweetness. What does Sydney suggest poetry should lead people towards? Virtue. What type of drama does Sydney mostly criticize? Tragedy. Which play does Sydney commend? Gorboduc. What quality of Gorboduc does Sydney appreciate? Morality. What does Sydney say the authors of Gorboduc failed to observe? Unities. According to Sydney, how many episodes should stage action be confined to? 1. What kind of scenes in tragedies does Sydney object to? Comic. What kind of poetry does Sydney specifically criticize for excessive imagination? Love. What group of poets does Sydney criticize for tedious conceits? Opusist. What type of verse does Sydney discuss at the end of the text? Quantitative. What does Sydney promise to those who appreciate poetry? Fame. What does Sydney say will be lacking in those who do not appreciate poetry? Epitaph. Stephen Gosson against dash type of literature. Imaginative type. Identify who is the author has written the life of Bacon. George Gordon. An apology of poetry. Identify the reason for the same work. Because of two publishers. One of the ripest statements of the age relates to Sydney. An Apology for Poetry is a work of literary criticism. An Apology for Poetry is the main contribution to dash Renaissance. Identify the first charge of Stephen Gosson. Poetry is the waste of time. In which modern days of language, how the metaphonic language of Sydney is called? Semiotics. Judicial arrangement or the form of structure in an apology for poetry is descriptive. First criticism starts in the period of dash Tudor. Identify the types of criticism in apology for poetry. Judicial. According to Stephen Gosson, poets are dash of the commonwealth and father of lies, caterpillars. Sydney usual adaptation of rhyme scheme is ABB, AA, BBA. A Defense of Poetry is an unfinished essay written by